Hi everyone, I'm Melody, and do you remember Sparkle? For me, she was one of my favorite characters in Penacony, even if she didn't get much screen time. But these days, nobody talks about her or uses her. Why exactly is that? Well, many could point the blame to hypercarry teams dying out, but that's simply not the reason. I feel like tons of people still use hypercarry teams, but they just use Robin instead. But wait a minute, Robin is meant for dual comps. Why is she preferred over the dedicated hypercarry support? Well, that's the thing. She's, outright better. Why is that? Well, let's find out. But before anything, comment below if you like Sparkle, and if there was one thing you could change about her, what would it be? Every time Sparkle says, "Can you find the answer?" she's asking you to find the answer for why the devs decided to underbake her so bad. So, Sparkle came out at the beginning of 2.0, and at that time, many thought she was breaking the game and power creeping Bronya. Her kit started tons of debates since people felt it was too soon and unfair for a character to just change game mechanics, many claiming that she was a sign of terrible things to come in the meta. Why did people think this? Well, Sparkle has a gimmick. It's the one thing that makes her stand out, and that's her gimmick to increase your total skill points to 7, as well as artificially give you skill points when she ults. She came out during a time where Lune was still very meta-relevant, and his biggest weakness was his skill point negativity, so a lot of people assumed she would be breaking the ceiling like never seen before. A lot of her kits served similar functionality to Bronya, so it appeared she was just a limited replacement. But as time has progressed, this couldn't be anywhere near the case. You see, the truth is, I believe Bronya's outright better than Sparkle in most teams. Bronya provides pure damage percent when she skills you, advances you forward 100%, and cleanses you too. When she ults, she buffs attack and crit damage for everyone. Her traces provide 10% damage for free for the party at all times, as well as a very not so talked about death buff for the beginning of the battle, which is a really cool idea. Bronya covers many buffs, but her biggest flaw undoubtedly is her skill point negativity. She eats them like she's mad, nyam 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 nyam, but in return, she effectively doubles your damage dealer's actions while buffing them too. This was hard back then, as our sustain options were far more limited. But these days, we have many purely SP positive sustains that can help her, making doubling actions easy, assuming they only use one skill point. A really neat thing in Bronya's kit is her having the action advance on her basic, encouraging you not to feel afraid to gain a skill point every now and again while still having her be in the same cycle. Well, what about Sparkle? She can do that, right? No, she just can't. Her action advance is only 50%, and trust me when I say I was gaslit so hard back then. Every content creator swore that 50% action advance made no difference, that it was practically the same as 100%. But it's absolutely not. I can't express how many times my character gets advanced only a bit just to still be stuck in the last cycle or before an enemy's attack. This forces you to build 160 speed on Sparkle, which makes her far harder to build. What's worse, she doesn't even have a cleanse. Why is this? It's such a stupid design decision. The reason why she likely wasn't given a full action advance is pretty self-explanatory. If she had one, she would be able to permanently loop with Bronya, which would allow for infinite ults. Combine that with cones like Dance 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 and someone could easily break the game. That's understandable, I suppose. But why does she not get a cleanse? Why is the premium 5-star you have to actively pull and be lucky to get not have this quality of life that the free standard character did? Okay, so what buffs does Sparkle provide? Oh god, here we go. I can't even describe how atrocious these buffs are. Sparkle might as well have been a 4-star. Her skill provides 24% of her crit damage, plus 45% to an ally. If she has 200% of her own, she's giving about 93% crit damage. Not gonna lie, that's not really that huge of a buff all things considered. For back then, yeah, and now for some teams I guess, but so many characters give crit damage that it becomes so oversaturated, and it's definitely a worse raw buff than something like Death Shred, or especially All Res Pin. Her trace gives 15% attack to all allies. The catch is, if you want her to give even more, you have to have a mono quantum team to get 45% attack. The hilarious part? All of that effort, and it's still worse than Bronya's attack buff from her ult, that she doesn't even have to build an entire team for. Alright, well, what about damage percent? Oh god. This is what gets me the most. So, Sparkle rewards you for using skill points. When you do, you get a damage percent buff of 6%. It can stack 3 times for 18%. When she does her ultimate, she adds 10% for every stack, making it 48%. 1. This is literally worse than the damage percent Bronya's skill provides. Yes, she gives it to the entire party, but you're playing hyper carry with her, so that just makes it pointless. 2. You literally have to work for this buff. You don't just skill a character forward to get it, you have to be spending skill points nearly every turn to keep the buff up. 3. Speaking of keeping the buff up, Sparkle has a 3-turn ultimate generally. While her ultimate only lasts 2 turns, this means keeping her enhanced buff up is extremely difficult. Holy shit, they fucked up with this kit, all on the assumption that too much SP would be breaking the game. But it didn't, it absolutely didn't. What makes this even ultra worse? Sparkle isn't even that skill point positive. She skills every turn, she doesn't have a skill point refund or a basic attack action events, so optimally, you skill every time. She recovers 4 skill points when she ults, meaning she is only gaining you 1 skill point every 3 or so turns. For a character whose entire gimmick relies on skill points and breaking the barrier for them, she failed in every way. That being said, I will mention that her gaining 4 skill points back at once is specifically useful for a character like Lune, but it's just not positive enough. So why do people use Robin, the dedicated dual damage support, for hypercarry teams over her now? I can give a few easy explanations. Robin provides a damage buff via her skill that's stronger than Sparkle's by default. Robin provides crit damage for free, even more if you follow-up attack. Robin provides the biggest attack buff possible in the game to all allies. And most of all, she 100% action forwards everybody. This means you can run Bronya Robin and have Bronya be able to double your damage dealer's action again. Robin effectively can quadruple your damage dealer's actions if used right. Again, we have sustains capable of amazing SP generation now. Gallagher is literally free, so SP should barely be an issue despite everything. But here are the other things that make this situation even worse. Bronya with her light cone receives energy regen, more damage percent, and a free skill point every 2 ultimates. This helps her with her SP problems. Her E1 allows her to have a 50% chance to not use a skill point when she skills. It's luck, but it's always a chance for more skill points. In fact, I would love to compare Bronya and Sparkle in the Eidolon department too. Bronya is a standard banner character. She's free. You can choose to get her for your 300th standard banner character select. And you have countless opportunities to get her at any time through standard banner pulls or losing limited banner 50/50s. Here's the thing. If you got her for your select, we now have another free 5-star select next patch. This can guarantee you Bronya E1, so keep this in mind. The accessibility makes a huge difference as Sparkle is a limited 5-star and far, far harder to get. If you got extra unlucky, she would take about 300 pulls just to get E1 for. Let's say you do. What does it do? Well, it makes her ultimate last an extra turn, which is much needed, and gives her even more attack percent that she desperately needed to provide. It's pretty good, I guess. Now, what about their E2s? Bronya's is really unique. It increases your damage dealer's speed by 30% after skill, which can open for many awesome speed tuning ideas and even encourage attack boots more often. Sparkle's E2 is by far her best Eidolon, but if I'm honest, it's not enough to warrant investing so heavily for. By this point, yes, E2 Sparkle will be providing more damage than E0 Bronya. But even that's debatable since Sparkle can't fully double your damage dealer's actions like her. So, let's go over the glaring design problems. 1. Awful attack buff. Buff gets better with Mono Quantum, yet is still not on par with Bronya's. Even Huahua is competitive. 2. Awful damage percent buff. Takes a ton of work to get, and at full value isn't even higher than Bronya's. 3. Better crit damage buff than Bronya, but not better enough to justify no debuff cleanse or full action advance. 4. Her basic attack trace is useless. It could have been something far more useful. 5. Her skill point generation isn't even impressive and can be easily outclassed by other characters such as Gallagher and Sunday. Oh, I saved the worst comparison for last. 'Cause wowzers, it's so over for Sparkle. Sunday is outright better. Literally, he just is. There is not a single reason you would ever use Sparkle over Sunday unless you somehow specifically needed 7 skill points max for some setup. Sparkle felt made for Lune, and yet E2 Lune just doesn't work with her. Her buffs don't last long enough for his extra turn to also be buffed. Sunday fixes this completely with very long, almost always permanent buff uptime. Sparkle doesn't even buff Lune that much, since she decided to reward other quantum characters instead, which that team is basically dead in a ditch these days. Sunday, who is made for summons, still buffs Lune more, even with other things such as energy regen. Sparkle is meant to regenerate skill points, but even struggles to do that. Sunday is SP neutral out the box, and more SP positive than Sparkle at S1. At E2, he becomes the most SP friendly character in the game, I think. So what the actual hell were they thinking? Who even knows? This character was banking far too hard on her SP gimmick, having everything needlessly undertuned to compensate. But as you can see, there's still video left, so let's get to some fun stuff. If Sparkle were good, or came out now, what would I change to her kit for her to be better? My goal would be for her to be the best dedicated hypercarry support, with her serving different niches to Sunday as to not be replaced by him. Even him possibly being just a side option you can choose as an alternative. First of all, the idea of using skill points with her to get stronger is a really good concept, especially with her supposed to continue to replenish SP. So, I would make those damage percent buffs higher. Instead of up to 18%, I would make it 35%, and when she ults, it'll go up to 65%. It's not a huge increase, but it gets better. To pair with that, allies with Cypher will get 18% def ignore for free. Yes, I fully believe her E2 should have been included in her base kit. While we're at it, let's replace her basic attack trace that gives her more energy. It's pointless. Rather, let's make her actually do her damn job. Every 2 uses of skill recovers 1 skill point. This one simple change has suddenly made her far more SP positive. And what about that Lackluster skill? It can stay at 50% action advance, that's fine. But she can cleanse debuffs like Bronya and Sunday. Or, if they want to make her more unique, maybe she increases your effect res by 30% when she skills you. Her final trace that gives a 15% attack buff base and goes up to 45% attack buff for Mono Quantum, this buff sucks. 45% attack buff isn't even that insane for all the work. It's far from something like Acheron's Nihility trace. So, let's change it outright. To make Sparkle stand out from Bronya and Sunday, she should provide a buff more unique, rather than attack percent. Let's change it to when enemies are attacked, reduces all res pin by 12%. If enemy has a quantum weakness, reduces all res pin by 24%, lasts for 2 turns. This makes it where Mono Quantum is still really good with her, since they'll always get that full res pin. But it means that normal teams can still get that buff too, but less consistent. Like Lune fighting an imaginary and quantum weak boss would still be able to get the full benefits, but for every boss, he wouldn't. Lastly, I'll change up her Eidolons. Her E1 can stay the same, since she no longer provides attack buffs, this Eidolon is suddenly really nice. Her E2, however, let's change that. For allies with Cypher, each stack of talent additionally provides 5% crit rate and 10% crit damage. Now she can provide more crit rate and crit damage, something she is meant to specialize at. Mono Quantum again is eating well, because Fushuan also provides crit rate, so if Sparkle has her Lycon at E2, you can run your DPS at 70% crit rate and still have 100% crit rate in combat as long as you still are always using skill points. Her E4 can stay exactly the same, as it's pretty useful still for the extra SP hungry characters. And her E6 is weird as it encourages a dual comp team, but I guess it can stay. Let's just add 10% extra all res pin while we're at it. And there, suddenly Sparkle isn't broken, but she isn't dog shit. She doesn't power creep Bronya, and she isn't just Sunday. This updated kit would allow her to stand out. She's the character you want for skill points fam. She would be perfect paired with Bronya, rather than replacing her on most teams. I really truly think they were extremely uncreative when designing her kit. This way she can stand out and have a proper niche, rather than just do the same buffs as Bronya, but differently and worse. She may not completely double your damage dealer's actions, but she has great, far more useful buffs to compensate, and no longer is she barely SP positive. She's actively making skill points never a concern. So, that's the video. Unfortunately, my character fix will never be reality, and she is only destined to get worse patch by patch. But I had fun going over this, and I hope it was interesting. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Support is what allows me to keep making content. And with that, I bid you adieu, my notes.
Or else you will die!